Hey friends, this is Bev Wolfe from Transparency Now, or you may know me as the Mrs. Wolfe from our half-acre homestead. Wolfe and I are going into the camp this weekend. I've written this all down, folks, so I'm going to be reading this because there is just way too much information for me just to flip off the top of my head without getting confused. Okay? Wolfe and I are going to the camp this weekend. I have not been overnight yet this summer. But before we go, I want to share some disturbing things that have come to my attention. Several articles have come across my desktop, and I want to connect some dots. Now, these dots might all be hypothetical, but I will leave you to draw your own conclusions. All the articles I mentioned will be given as links in the More Info box below this video. Now, folks, please, I'm not telling you what to believe, if to believe anything at all. I'm just saying, keep an open mind. There's been a lot of talk about the USA and Canada supporting Syrian rebels in the fight against the government regime, which supposedly used chemical warfare on its own civilian population. And apparently the physical involvement by our governments can happen any day. I've also heard that U.S. military forces have had all leave scheduled for September through October canceled. Now, I'm not up on military activity, but this is something that does not happen very often, and it doesn't take a genius to figure that one out. There is the article, Mysterious FEMA Region 3 Alert Has Folks on Edge, and I'm going to share most of the article with you because, well, for me to actually just take points out of the article would be copying the whole article anyway, so I'm just going to share most of it with you. It states that retired State Senator Sheldon R. Songstad of South Dakota State issued an emergency FEMA Region 3 alert on August 13th. Region 3 is comprised of Washington, D.C., Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and West Virginia. Some of the details are: UN peacekeepers began training the 4th week of July and will complete their 9-week training by October 1st. They are learning English as well as U.S. weapon systems and urban warfare training, to the tune of 386,000 troops. The Center for Disease Control ordered $11 million worth of antibiotics. Where are they going? FEMA Region 3. When are they due? October 1st. This, coupled with the fact that the World Health Organization held an emergency meeting, its second such meeting in its history, to discuss the MERS coronavirus. This is quite unsettling. The World Health Organization determined that a vaccine must be in place by October 1st. Periodic testing of GPS and communication satellites is normal, but coordinating their testing for the first time with a testing date of September 29th is noteworthy. All Department of Homeland Security agents must now qualify with sidearm, shotgun, and AR-15s by September 28th. Less lethal qualifications are not mentioned. Has one eyebrow raised? The Department of Homeland Security will receive 2,800 mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles that must be delivered by October 1st. All National Guard units will complete their annual 2-week training in riot control and disaster assistance. All units must have their training complete by September 30th. However, the Eastern-based Coast Guard units will not be performing their usual training in the Gulf. This year, they'll be trained in Virginia and Delaware for 10 days, beginning September 26th. Coincidentally, the emergency broadcast system will begin daily testing beginning on September 25th through October 2nd. All of this kind of reminds me of the bomb-sniffing dogs being trained at the Boston Marathon for the very first time ever. FEMA purchase orders deserve a little attention too. They ordered over $14.2 million for MREs, which is meals ready to eat, and heater meals, and 22 million pouches of emergency water to be delivered to Region 3 by October 1st. An additional order of $13.6 million worth of MREs and heater meals will be delivered to Austin by October 1st. The U.S. military will not be permitted leave from September 28th through November 5th. NORCOM's yearly training for civil unrest is suspended until September 27th. To be performed in the northeast coastal areas, date for release of QE3 report has been moved to October 16th. Over 300 school systems will be issued a 3-day emergency kit for each student in September. Then there's this article. U.S. Air Force is going to shut down the satellite tracking space fence. The U.S. has been keeping watch on the objects orbiting overhead since the 1960s, but General William Shelton, commander of Air Force Space Command, has just dropped a bombshell in a recently leaked memo. The Air Force Space Surveillance System, or Space Fence, is to be shut down as of October 1st. If the shutdown goes through, the U.S. will lose over 40% of its orbital tracking system. And finally, massive government drill planned to test possibility of U.S. electric grid going down. Here's a piece of that article. Our electrical grid is extremely vulnerable to an attack that could leave our country in the dark for weeks, maybe even months. In preparation for this type of attack, our government is going to test the grid's vulnerabilities as thousands of utility workers team up with anti-terrorism experts, Homeland Security, the FBI, and other governmental agencies. On November 13th to 14th, 2013, the United States, Canada, and Mexico, along with more than 150 companies and organizations in all three countries, will take part in the GridX 2013 preparedness drill. One of the largest preparedness drills in our country's history. They will practice for an event unlike anything this country has ever seen. One expert fears it's only a matter of time away from happening. The drill will look at how the three governments react to the loss of the power grid and a crippled supply chain that would inevitably follow the event. Most people don't realize how important the grid is to almost everything in today's world. It basically runs everything from our communication infrastructure to our drinking water and our food distribution systems. But that's really just the start. The economy, our hospitals, and everything people depend on in today's modern world would be gone. Okay, so those are the articles that have come across my desk. Now that I've shared some of these articles with you, let's look at how they may connect. You've heard me talk about Beyond the Border, how the U.S. and Canadian governments want to set up a security perimeter where they can share information collected from border crossings. Information that can be collected through biometric technology, for example, face recognition technology, fingerprints, airport scans, and so on. You have heard me rant about them testing eye scanners in schools and on school buses. How CISPA would make it legal for all information collected via electronic media can not only be shared with the government, but can be monitored if the government feels there is anything worth listening to or looking into or looking at. And the Beyond the Borders will make Canada a part of that cyber surveillance through the sharing of important information. And last but not least, you've heard me rant about how the best and brightest of today's technology that is available to the public is at least 10 years out of date compared to what the powers that be have under wraps. That's a given. Remember, the internet started out as classified military, and so did GPS and cell phone technology. So here's what I'm thinking. Just thinking. Maybe, just maybe, there's something really big coming down the pipe. It could be anything. War could be just the tip of the iceberg. Civil war even. Why would Canada and the U.S., at the very least, involve themselves in a civil war in Syria? It is a lose-lose situation. If they back the rebels, who may have been the culprits of the chemical attack just to gain sympathy. What does the U.S. stand to gain? The Syrian rebels on a good day would rather spit on the USA than join hands with them. In other words, the Western world can back them, but in the end, they will still have no respect or loyalty for the Western world. So why? And by the way, if they're going to attack another country for chemically attacking its civilians, why aren't they shutting down Monsanto? Because they've been chemically killing us for decades, only slower and sneakier. So between the end of August and mid-November, here's what's going on. In a nutshell, the government is stockpiling food, medical supplies, and weapons on a monumental scale. To the point of militarizing the DHS and the police, because let's face it, the U.S. military wouldn't constitutionally turn on its own citizens. Except that whole thing that Obama did or signed saying detain without whatever. They're waving flags all over the place, distracting us with talk about getting involved in Syria, and canceled all military leave. They're going to shut down the satellite tracking system. And they're going to do a massive electrical grid drill, which could shut down the entire electrical grids in parts of Canada, US, and Mexico. Why? Why? Why all of this? And all in a 6-week period. One question, folks, and I want you to think about this long and hard. When you install a new program, like a security program, on the hard drive of your computer, what's the first thing you do after it's installed? You reboot. This is Bev Wolfe from Transparency Now saying, if the government needs to be this prepared, all I can say is we should be much better prepared. Just saying.